Hello, General Hospital will reveal Ava stepped into Sunny's new home in silence, the sharp echo of her heels against the hardwood floor reverberating through the otherwise still space. She hadn't expected much upon entering, perhaps a confrontation, perhaps an empty room, but certainly not the scene that now unfolded before her eyes. Sunny, the man whose name was synonymous with power, danger, and an iron will, lay collapsed on the floor, his body contorted in pain. His face was pale, sweat glistening across his brow, and his chest heaved with shallow, labored breaths. Scattered across the floor beside him were his heart medications, the bottle cracked open, its contents strewn like fallen dominoes. A few pills had rolled under the furniture, unreachable in his moment of desperate need. Ava stood frozen. Her eyes fixed on him, not with panic or urgency, but with a cold, unreadable stillness. It was clear what had happened. Sunny was having a heart attack. Every second was critical. Yet Ava didn't rush to his side, didn't drop to her knees, didn't call for help. She simply observed, her voice barely a murmur, "You need these," as her gaze drifted to the pills he could no longer reach. The moment felt suspended in time, yet Ava's mind was anything but still. An image from the past flashed uninvited into her thoughts. Tracy, standing firm and emotionless, denying Edward his heart pills during a moment of crisis. Ava had once judged her harshly for that. She remembered thinking how cruel, how heartless someone would have to be to deny another person the chance to live. And now here she was, in the same position, confronted with the same choice, frozen by the weight of her own conflicted emotions. Years of bitterness and betrayal coursed through her. Her relationship with Sunny had never been simple. There had been pain, loss, mistrust, an ever-shifting web of power and emotion. Maybe, deep down, part of her still carried the wounds he inflicted. Maybe this was justice. Maybe it was revenge. Or maybe it was something even darker, the sudden and terrifying realization that she held someone's life in her hands and didn't know what to do with it. Outside, a breeze stirred the curtains at the window, as if time itself was urging her to move. Sunny's breathing was becoming more erratic, each gasp more ragged than the last. Still, Ava didn't move. Her arms hung at her sides, her fists clenched not in anger, but in paralysis. Her heart pounded, but her body betrayed her, unwilling to act. One call. One movement. That's all it would take. The distance between the decision and the act felt like a chasm she couldn't cross. It wasn't just Sunny's life on the line, it was Ava's humanity. The decision she made in this moment would define something in her that perhaps she had long buried. Was she capable of compassion? Was she willing to let go of the past, just long enough to save a life? Or would she cross a line she couldn't return from, choosing silence, choosing inaction, choosing to let him die? And so, with every second slipping away, Sunny's fate, and her own, hung in the balance, suspended in that haunting space between retribution and redemption. In the darkness of the night, a single voice shattered the stillness like a bolt of lightning. "What did you do, Kristina?" Lucky Spencer's voice rang out with panic and disbelief, echoing through the otherwise silent road, thick with tension. His silhouette was barely visible, his figure illuminated only by the harsh glow of streetlights flickering overhead. His eyes were locked on a vehicle that had just screeched to a halt. Smoke curled from the front hood, and the sharp, grating wail of a car alarm pierced the night, accompanied by the distant sound of shouts and footsteps approaching. Behind the wheel sat Kristina Corinthos Davis, her face obscured by shadows, but her hands still tightly clenched around the steering wheel. Her knuckles were white, her entire body frozen in place. The moment had already passed, but it reverberated violently in the aftermath. Something, or someone, had been hit. The impact had been undeniable. Kristina wasn't supposed to be there. Just hours ago, she had been at her community center, the Corinthos Davis House, reviewing plans for an outreach program aimed at helping young single mothers. That was her world now, a carefully crafted space of purpose and healing, where she could finally step out of the shadow of her powerful family and become someone in her own right. Her days were filled with coordinating workshops, mentoring volunteers, managing funding proposals, and hosting charity events. It was meaningful, rewarding work. But it also left her vulnerable, emotionally raw and sometimes overwhelmed by the burdens she carried. Lately, something had shifted in her. The pressure of her responsibilities, the weight of her family's legacy, and the complicated dynamics with her loved ones, especially Sunny and Ava, had begun to fracture the carefully balanced identity she'd worked so hard to build. And then there was Ava. There had always been tension between them, unspoken resentments and quiet hostility wrapped beneath strained civility. Kristina never fully trusted Ava, and recently, her suspicions had grown into obsession. She believed Ava was hiding something that could hurt their family, and Kristina had convinced herself that it was her duty to expose it. She hadn't planned to follow Ava that night. It had been a sudden, impulsive decision, one fueled by instinct and a gnawing sense of unease. But once she was behind the wheel, tailing Ava's car through the winding streets of Port Charles, it felt like something else had taken over. Her heart pounded in her chest, not just from adrenaline, but from a dangerous certainty that whatever Ava was doing, it needed to be stopped. And now, as the twisted sound of metal hitting something echoed in her ears, she realized she may have gone too far. Was she chasing Ava? Or trying to block her path? Did Ava swerve and crash on her own, or did Kristina somehow cause the impact? These questions hung in the air like thick fog, impossible to ignore. Lucky's shout wasn't just filled with shock, it was laced with accusation, as if he had witnessed something he couldn't unsee. His presence only deepened the gravity of the situation. He had been gone from Port Charles for years, and now he returned just in time to see this? Fate was cruel like that. Kristina slowly emerged from the car, her movements stiff and uncertain. Her eyes scanned the scene, and she caught sight of Ava's car nearby, its front end crumpled against a pole, the windshield shattered. But was Ava inside? The answer was unclear, adding to the chaos mounting around her. Flashing lights began to appear in the distance. Sirens were approaching. Help was on the way, but the damage had already been done. Not just to the vehicles, but to the truth. To Kristina's carefully constructed identity. To the fragile line between justice and recklessness. She had always seen herself as someone trying to make a difference, to bring healing instead of destruction. But in this one moment, in this one night, everything she believed about herself might have been undone. Lucky stood across from her, not moving, not speaking anymore, just watching with eyes full of questions. And Kristina, though still physically intact, knew that emotionally, spiritually, something inside her had already crashed. There was no undoing what had happened. And there was no turning back. Kristina stood in the dimly lit garage, the heavy scent of oil and metal filling the air as she surveyed her surroundings. The cluttered space was filled with rolls of tubing stacked haphazardly on shelves, a car parked in the center of the room, and various tools scattered across the concrete floor. The fluorescent lights flickered above her, casting harsh shadows that only seemed to heighten the tension in the room. She gripped a wrench-like tool in her hand, the cold steel of it a sharp contrast against her warm, trembling fingers. Her mind raced, her thoughts as disjointed as the scattered tools at her feet. "Have to stop Ava," she muttered under her breath, the words barely audible but full of intent. She stood in the garage, alone with her thoughts, the weight of her decision pressing heavily on her chest. Her eyes flicked toward the car in front of her, its sleek body a reminder of everything she'd come to distrust about Ava. The more she thought about it, the clearer the plan seemed. Ava was a threat, a calculated, dangerous presence in the lives of those she loved. Kristina had been watching, listening, gathering evidence, and now, the time had come to act. For a moment, she hesitated, staring at the tool in her hand. It was just a simple instrument, but in the right hands, it could cause irreparable damage. Her fingers tightened around the handle, and her gaze shifted toward the car's brake lines, easily visible underneath the vehicle. She could almost see it now. Cutting the brake lines would disable the car, make it impossible for Ava to escape, or even worse, cause an accident that would take her out of the picture permanently. Kristina's breath caught in her throat. Could she really do this? Could she destroy something so vital, something so essential to someone's safety, just to stop them from causing more harm? The thought lingered, as sharp and dangerous as the tool she held. She had been pushed to this point, pushed by betrayal, by the manipulation she saw in Ava's every move. She wasn't just reacting emotionally anymore, this was a calculated decision, an act of self-preservation, a way to protect her family and everything she had worked so hard for. If this was the only way to make Ava pay for what she had done, what she continued to do, then so be it. But still, a voice in the back of her mind whispered warnings. Was this really the right path? Was she becoming just like the people she had fought so hard not to be? The memory of Tracy, standing over Edward and refusing to help him, flashed through Kristina's mind. Ava had been manipulative, yes, but did that justify the drastic measure she was contemplating? She clenched her jaw, determined to silence the doubts. There was no going back now. She had already crossed the line by even considering it. The question wasn't whether she could go through with it, it was whether she would allow herself to stop now that she had come so close. With a deep breath, Kristina dropped to her knees, the cold concrete pressing against her as she crawled beneath the car. Her hand hovered over the brake lines, and for a moment, time seemed to slow. This was it, the point of no return. At Portia's office in the hospital, the conversation between her and Nina had been intense, filled with frustration over Drew Quartermain's recent actions. Both women were growing increasingly annoyed with Drew's inability to make clear decisions or take the right steps in the ongoing crisis. As they leaned forward, exchanging their opinions and frustrations, neither expected the interruption that followed. Suddenly, the door to the office creaked open, and Ava appeared, standing in the doorway with an air of quiet authority. Her presence was commanding, and there was an undeniable edge to her demeanor. Neither Portia nor Nina could mask their surprise, though the look of skepticism was mutual. Ava was never one to avoid a direct confrontation, and whatever her presence meant this time, they were about to find out. Without a greeting, Ava stepped further into the room, her gaze sharp as she immediately shifted the conversation into a different gear. She was clearly just as displeased with Drew as the other two women were, but there was something about her tone that made it clear this wasn't just about venting frustration. This was something more deliberate, something calculated. Ava's eyes flicked between Nina and Portia as she spoke, her voice low but carrying weight. Both of you have been frustrated with Drew, and I'm sure you know by now, someone has to take action, she said, her words cutting through the tension in the room. She paused, letting the implication of her statement sink in before continuing. And let's face it, no one else seems to be doing anything, so it's up to us. Portia and Nina exchanged looks, both of them sensing the shift in Ava's mood. She wasn't just talking about confronting Drew, she was talking about something far more drastic. Ava's eyes gleamed with a dangerous certainty as she pressed on. You both have to take him down. The words hung in the air, and the gravity of her statement made both women freeze. The tone wasn't just casual, it was ominous. Both Nina and Portia stared at Ava, momentarily speechless. Take him down. Nina echoed cautiously, trying to grasp the full extent of Ava's words. What exactly are you suggesting? Ava's lips curled into a slight smirk, as though she were enjoying the suspense. You heard me, she said, her voice colder now. Drew has made too many mistakes, and he's still running around like he's untouchable. Well, he's not. If we want this resolved, if we want to move forward, you both have to deal with him. One way or another. Portia, still trying to process the implication, crossed her arms defensively. Are you talking about getting him out of town? Or something more extreme? Her voice betrayed a mix of skepticism and concern. Ava didn't flinch. "Whatever it takes," she replied coolly. "I don't care how it happens, but it has to happen. He needs to be stopped before he causes more damage. Trust me, you don't want him around when things hit the fan." The words were clear. Ava wasn't just talking about pushing Drew out of their lives temporarily. She was talking about eliminating him as a threat entirely. Whether that meant getting rid of him or forcing him into a position where he would be completely out of the picture, she didn't specify, but it was clear that Ava had no intention of letting Drew walk away unscathed. The room fell into a thick silence as Portia and Nina took in what Ava was suggesting. Both women knew that if they were to go along with this plan, there would be no turning back. There was a weight to Ava's words that made it impossible to ignore. She wasn't just asking for their help, she was making it clear that this was a necessary course of action if they hoped to regain control over the situation. "Do you understand what I'm saying?" Ava's eyes narrowed, and the silence grew heavier, the tension palpable. Portia looked at Nina, her brow furrowed, but Nina's expression was unreadable. Both women had been pushed to the edge by Drew's actions, but whether they would take Ava's advice to such dangerous extremes remained uncertain. What was clear, however, was that Ava was committed to seeing this through, no matter the cost. The question now was, would Nina and Portia follow her lead into this risky game, or would they push back against Ava's chilling ultimatum? The upcoming episodes of General Hospital promise to be full of high-stakes drama, with characters making decisions that could change the course of their lives. Kristina is on the edge, and her plan to take down Ava is becoming increasingly dangerous. Her anger and frustration with Ava have reached a boiling point, and it seems that Kristina is willing to go to extreme lengths to stop her. However, the question remains whether Nina and Portia will stand by her or if they will balk at the idea of resorting to such drastic measures. Their moral compass is being tested, and the tension between them is palpable. The future of their relationships with Kristina will depend on how far they are willing to go in this scheme, and whether they will cross a line that may leave them questioning their own integrity. Meanwhile, Drew's situation continues to unravel, as the pressure of his actions weighs heavily on him. He's at the center of a growing storm, with his decisions alienating him from those he cares about most. His relationship with his family is increasingly strained, and his attempts to fix things often seem to make matters worse. The emotional toll is evident as Drew grapples with the consequences of his actions. He finds himself caught between a rock and a hard place, unsure of whom to trust or where his loyalties lie. As his past mistakes come back to haunt him, Drew must figure out whether redemption is still possible or if he's doomed to be consumed by the fallout of his choices. Ava, on the other hand, is never one to back down, and her role in this tangled web is growing more complicated. Her calculated moves have always been part of her strategy, but now, she finds herself facing not just Kristina's plot, but a deeper threat from the people she once trusted. As Ava continues to manipulate the situation to her advantage, she may find herself in a position where even she can't control the outcome. Her past actions have caught up with her, and the consequences of her choices are starting to close in. Will Ava be able to maintain her grip on power, or will the tides turn against her as the characters around her start making moves of their own? As the tension builds, the emotional stakes for the characters are at their highest. Portia and Nina, who have been dealing with their own personal struggles, find themselves forced to choose between doing what's right and following Kristina's lead. They each have their own reasons for wanting to keep Drew in check, but they are also bound by their conscience and their relationship with each other. This internal conflict will only deepen as they become more entangled in the drama. The personal stakes are high, and each character must decide whether to protect their loved ones or sacrifice their values to achieve their goals. Ultimately, General Hospital is setting the stage for a powerful exploration of morality, loyalty, and redemption. With alliances shifting and betrayal lurking at every corner, each character is faced with the tough question of whether they can control their own fate or whether they will be swept up in the forces beyond their control. As the drama escalates, viewers can expect shocking revelations, unexpected alliances, and the painful consequences of the choices that will shape the future of everyone involved. The storylines are heating up, and the next few episodes will undoubtedly leave fans on the edge of their seats, eagerly awaiting what comes next.